Okay, friends, let's start with your object-oriented programming. This topic consists of how to understanding the objects, how to create in classics, and in classes how to add in constructor, properties, method, and variables. How to access all these things from an object, how to create an subclass, and in the subclass how to inherit the main class, which means inheritance. Okay, so we have to study the object oriented concepts here, so we'll be starting it right now. Okay, this is your form. Let's take a button just for the purpose, for just I can say for retrieving the values from the methods. Okay, so this is your public class form 2 which has been given to you by the system, which is auto generated. Now the thing what we are going to create, we are just going to create any class. Okay, so how to create any class? The first thing here, the first word comes here is your access specifier, which is the keyword, where I can say it is a public and the keyword class, which defines the class, and the name of the class, which I'll say class 1. Okay, now let's try to add some constructor in it. So let's add a constructor. So how to add a constructor? So it is a public constructor, public sub, and the constructor should have a keyword which is called as new. Okay, so and this is your constructor. When I'm saying it is not having any type of parameters, it means it is parameterless constructor, or I can say default constructor. Okay, so if you want to have a parameterized constructor, these constructors are basically used to set the values of your private variables. So let's have a private variable, private a as integer, private b as integer. Okay, so what you want to do with the default constructor, whatever you want to write, you can write inside the default constructor. You can assign some values to a and b with the by default. So a is equals to 0 and b should equals to 0. Okay, so if we create an object of the class, this default constructor will be called if we don't send any type of parameters. But if you want to set the values to a and b, how we can do these things? So let's see. We will be creating another constructor, but this will be different from your default constructor. It will be parameterized constructor. It will accept some values from the user while creating an object of the class. Public sub new. Now let's start with your parameters. So the parameter will start by val a as, I can say, x as integer, and by val y as integer. Okay, so this is your constructor which accepts two parameter x and y. So x, the value inside the x should be stored in a, so a is equals to x and b is equals to y. Okay, so these are the constructor. This is the parameterized constructor. Okay, so let's create a method here. So there's a method. Let's create a public function, and name of the function is nothing but an add. Okay, so it is not accepting any parameters here. and just it is going to return something as double. Okay, so I'll be writing a return keyword, and I'll be saying return what? So return A plus B. Okay, so this is how we can create a constructor. These two are the constructor. This is your default constructor, this is your parameterized constructor, and this is your function which is going to return something in double. Now let's create a one more class class 2. Now let's create an object of this class, dim obj1 as new class 1. When I open this class, it will accept two parameters. So there are two types of constructor. Basically it shows new, this is the one constructor, and the next constructor which we have created, x as integer and y as integer, as a two it accepts two parameters. Let's send the parameters to it, 2 comma 3. So x and y, x is 2 and y is equals to 3. So we have sent the values automatically. When I'll be calling this object, or the memory will be allocated to this object, at that time this constructor will be called. X should be initialized to 2 and y should be initialized to 3. So x and y, the values will be sent to your a and b, which is the private data type here. Okay, so it is a integer data type and it is private, so it will not be accessible here inside the class using your obj1. So obj1 is accessible to what things? Let's see. Obj1 dot, it is it accessible to your a? No. Is it accessible to b? We can't access this because it is having a private keyword which is here. It can be directly seen inside the object. Okay, it is not accessible here. So let's see, can we see add? Okay, it is a public function add. Let's see, can we see this? obj1 dot add, it is a public function add as a double, so we should access it. But let's let's see. So there is a mistake here, so we didn't wrote the sub procedure, and I can say public sub, the procedure name is testing. Okay, inside the sub procedure, let's close the sub procedure and sub. Okay, so now let's see, obj is accessible to what? Obj1 dot is accessible to add method, which is publicly accessible to everyone. So this is the add function I'm just going to call. Let's see, and this public sub testing will work for your, let's see, do we have a command button? Okay, yeah, it is there. So this function, this sub procedure will work for your button 1. Okay, let's see, and this button 1 dot click. Okay, let's directly call it by your button underscore 1 underscore click. So just we are going to create an object of this class 2, dim c2 as new class 2, and c2 dot testing. So I'll just going to call this testing by the on the click of the button. let's say starter form is form 2. Is there an error here? Let's build it. Let's see, do we have an error? Class 3 is not defined here. Let's remove it. Let's build it. Okay, now it should work. Testing should call. Okay, we should have a message box here. Inside message box we are going to call this. Okay, so this is how we can create an object of the classes, and how we can call the methods inside the classes. Now let's see how we can create a property. So let's create a one more private member. Private, I will say proval as integer. Okay, now let's write in property. It is on public property. Okay, so what it is an read only or write only. So I'm saying it is both. It can be read, it can be, I can say it can be read or it can be written. Okay, it means I can set the values, I can get the values from it. Public property, the name of the property is the set values. Okay, and it should also return something. It should be also return something, and the data type of returning is integer. Okay, so when I'm sending the values to it, so when I use set value is equals to 1, so what is going to happen when is equal to operator is used? The value will be sent to your set method inside it, and the value will be sent inside your value variable. So whatever the things are there, I'll be using this value for setting the value of my proval. Proval is equals to value, and in get we'll be writing, I just want to retrieve the value, so it will be writing return because I want to get something from it. So return what? So return the name of the variable, which is the private proval. Okay, now let's try to set the value to it. So I'll be using obj1 dot, let's see, we got the property set values is equals to 6. Okay, then let's use a message box. Message box, I just want to retrieve the value from it. obj1 dot set value. See the difference here. I'm When I'm using is equal to operator with it set value, this set 6 will be sent to your set value property, and automatically it will be sent to your set block. When it's sent to set block, the 6 is inside the value. So this value is stored inside your proval, which is again it is a private member. And when I directly call obj1.setValues, at that time he is going to hit the set values property, and he is going to seek into the get method or say get block, and it is just going to return me the proval, which is again the private member of your class. So it is just going to retrieve me the value of the proval using a return keyword, and of course it is an integer. Okay, let's see. The value was set to your property, and I'm retrieving the value from the property, and this is for you add. So, okay. Okay, any problems here? No, there is no problem here, so nothing is remaining. So this is your base constructor, I can say default constructor. This is your parameterized constructor. This is your function which takes nothing as a parameter and it's returning something. This is the property and this is the class which is having the subprocedure called as testing, and this is the object which is working for your class 1, and it is passing two parameters to your parameterized constructor. This is your obj1 dot set values. It means this is the object which is accessing the class 1, and this is the set value is a property which is uh, setting the value 6 to your proval. Okay, and here obj1 dot set values is going to retrieve the value from your proval. This is the property, and this message box is just going to call the add function from your class 1. Okay, okay, let's continue again. So this was the class 2, and in this class 2 there was a sub procedure called as testing. Now the thing is that we'll be studying about your inheritance. So the thing is that what do you mean by access specifier? Private means what? It will be accessed inside the class. If I write it as a protected, so this protected will work inside this class, means A will be accessed inside the class, and it can be accessed in your inherited class also. Okay, so let's see. I'm just inheriting the class 1. Let's use inherit keyword. Inherits class 1. So class 2 inherits class 1. Inside that I'll be writing a sub procedure, public sub uh, test, and the thing I just want to access your A. So if I write A, so is accessible, is protected A as an integer. So this A is accessing my base class. Okay, so I will say A is equals to 10. Yeah, it works fine. Okay, now let's inherit this class 2 in your class 3. Okay, now let's create one more sub procedure. Now let's try to access A. It is again protected as an integer. So means how many times if you are going to, as many times you are going to um, inherit the classes, this protected member will be accessible to this classes. Okay, so this is your protected keyword, and if I write a private keyword here, if I write the private keyword, this A is not accessible because it is in private. If I write this thing as your friend A as integer, so A will be accessed to the whole class. Okay, plus the assemblies, or I can say to the whole class and the inherited class also. Okay, and if I write a protected friend, even if I write protected friend, this A will be accessed from any of your sub procedure which has been any of your class which has been inherited, which inherits the class A. Okay, see A is equals to, we can access all those things. So this was your access specifiers. So let's get back to your private A as integer and Let's see. So it will be giving you an error. Same thing, you will also get an error here. Now we saw that we can give the access specifiers to your data, or I can say a members. Even this sub procedure is a member of your class. Even this sub procedure is a member of the class. The only difference is that this sub procedure is nothing but your constructor. This function is also in the member of the class. It is accessible to other peoples or other classes, which is inheriting this. Then this is the property which is accessible to the inherited classes. So let's try to do something else. Let's see how this inheritance works. Okay, now the thing is that I'm inheriting this uh, constructor also. I means inheriting this constructor. If I'm willing to add a one more constructor here in your inherited class. So we'll be writing it like this: public sub, and then I'll be saying new keyword, and in new keyword I'll be adding a by val xx as integer, comma, by val yy as integer. Okay, the thing is that a new sub procedure has been called here, new procedure sub procedure has been made. So do I need to access this sub procedure if I want to store some values inside your base class, means base constructor? So I can do all this thing using my base dot, I want the new, it means my base dot new will be referring to your constructor, and then I'll be saying whatever the values of x's are there, send it to your x, and y is there, send it to your y. Okay, so this constructor will be call will be sending the values to your base constructor. Okay, so this is how we can create a constructor in your child class and send the values to your parent class. Okay, so now we know how to call the base constructor uh, directly by calling the constructor which has been created in your inherited class. Okay, so let's remove this thing. Now let's work with your function now. Now the thing is that I'll be creating one more function, public function add, sorry, by val a as integer, comma, by val b as integer. Okay, so the thing is that I just want to return something, so returning is like an as, it should return as integer. Okay, now both the functions are having the same name. It will work because of polymorphism, where this function doesn't have the parameters and this function have the parameters. Okay, so we can call it directly by setting the parameters. When I send no parameters, automatically this function will be called, and when I send the parameters a and b, or I can say 1 comma 2, so 1 is will be set to a and b will 2 will be set to b, so automatically this function will be called. Okay, let's use the return keyword, return, then I'll be saying a plus b. Okay, so a1 and b1. Okay, so we should not have any conflict here. Now we have created a function. Now the user wants to create the same function. Okay, the same function like an add. So we'll be creating the function here in your inherited class, public function add, and I will be saying by val a as integer, and we'll be saying by val b as integer. Okay, so we'll be saying add method has been already declared in your class. You can't use this add method here directly. Now the thing is that if you want to suppress this add method and you want to call this method, you have to use a keyword called as overrides. It means overridable. It means this function can be overridable. Okay, this function add can be overridable here. So when I write the same function here and the previous base class function has this keyword overridable, at that time I can suppress this function and I can create my function and I can call my function itself. So at that time I have to write an overrides. It means this function overrides this function. Okay, the problem is the return type. We have not specified the return type here. Now let's see A and B. Let's return something. Return, I can say A plus B, and let's concat it. Let's convert it first to string because it is going to give me an integer. So the return it to as a string, and then concat it with your hello. The return type here it should be like an string. It is going to give you an error because here is an integer, so the same signature should be there. This should be integer, this should be integer, this should be integer, this should be integer, and if it is a this is string, this should also be string. And here just return it, but before returning convert it into string. Okay, now we are going to create a sub procedure inside your class 3, or let's use your form 2 and let's create an object of your class 2. Now dim c2 as new class 2. Okay, so this is an object of your class 2. Now class 2 can access set values. It has been property of your base class. The same thing can access your add, and add the base class is having an add method which is returning something in double. Okay, so this was the first function which is accessible here, and the next is your a as integer and b as integer. Means what? Is not going to call this function. It is he's going to call the new function add, which is overrides your previous function. So I'll be saying 2 comma 3. Okay, and the writing it inside the message box. Okay, set c2. So let's okay, so we'll be giving 2 plus 3 5 hello. Okay, so the output will be like this. Okay, so you saw how the override readable and override keyword works. Okay, if you want to suppress the function which has been given in the previous class, and if you want to write the same function in your new class, you can override it. Okay, okay, now the problem with the overridable and overrides is the base class function should have overridable keyword inside it. So it should be there. If it is not there, you can't use overrides. Okay. So remove this overridable from your base class function, and now see the override will not work. Okay. So even the keyword is not written in this base class, I want to override it. So how to override it? So I should go to the main class and I should access this code, and in code I have to write overrideable. But if this code is not accessible to me, then what? Should I stop it there? No, we can't stop it there. We can suppress these things using your shadows keyword. It means whatever the things are there, if the previous user had not written overridable keyword in the function, and if you want to create a new function, so with the same name, you can use a shadow keyword. Okay, so it will work same as your overridable and overrides. Okay, now let's see how many times we can override this function. Okay, now let's assume the previous user or the creator of the base class has given this overridable keyword to your function. So we can use overrides here. Okay, now this thing is that the same function I'm going to create it here. Okay, so when you write overrides in your second class 2, you can again create the same function with the override keyword. Okay, you can directly write this function because this thing has been override rights. Okay, this function has been overridden. So again you have to specify the same keyword override. Okay, it's overrides the function, means this function is suppressed, and this function uh, is is a working function for this class 3. So if I create an object of class 3 and if I access the add function, so this is the function which is going to be called. Okay, and if you don't want to call this function and if you want to call the previous function, at that time you can use again your mybase and the name of the function which is called as add. So this thing, the add is going to be returning something to it. Okay, so let's use return keyword. Return mybase.add means the output, means what is going to happen when we are going to call this function add. This is going to call the base class which is the class 2, and inside the class 2 is going to call the add function. Okay, and the output will be sent to your uh, as a string to your original function. Okay, it is the same mechanism. So even if you want to write it here, you can also write it here. So what is going to happen, the user is going to call the class 3's add function, and this add function is going to call the class 2's add function. And if I write the same thing here, so it is going to call a class 1's add function. Okay, but the thing is that it is going to call the add function of the base class which has been inherited here. If you want to call the same thing here, so same I can the same add function which has been overrid, so you can specify here a comma b, so it will work same now. Okay, now the problem is that overridable is not written in your main class, so you can't override it. You can have to use a shadow. So it shadows the original, I can say it suppress the original add function and make your new add function work. This, the same problem is going to occur here. You can't use overrides here after working with the shadow. Again, you have to use shadows. This will work. Okay. Now let's work with your abstract classes. Okay. So abstract, or I can say it is called as a sealed. Okay, it can be termed as an abstract class or a sealed class. So this abstract class or the sealed class has only the part of, I can say it has only the declaration. It only has the declaration of the methods or the function inside it, and it has to inherit by some of the other class, and some of the other class has to do his work. Okay, for an example, let's create a public class. Okay, then let that public class have some name called as abst underscore class. Okay, now this is a ordinary class. If you want to create an abstract class, so you have to specify a keyword which is called as must inherit. So it means this class should be inherited by some of the other class. Okay, and if I'm using must inherit, and if I'm using a function here, it's public function add 123, and it should be returning something, so it's as integer. Okay, so when I write this function, so what is going to happen, this should be inherited, means this class must be inherited. And if I work with your a function which should have only the uh, data, or can the declaration type should be defined, so I'll be just saying this function should have a name, means the next class which is who is inheriting this class will create this function which is called add123. Okay, so he will be writing the body, I'll be not writing the body, just I'm declaring it. So it should say this function must be override, it must override. Okay, so the error which was we were having, that we didn't wrote end function, so that went off because we wrote must override. Okay, so it means when we inherit this class, we will write the body of your function 123. Let's create a class. Okay, it inherits your abstract class. Automatically you got the function which you want to override. Okay, here we wrote the must override, automatically we got a overrides function here. Overrides, it got a function add 123. Now we can write anything inside it, where you can say it should return something, return hello, or I can say 1. Okay, it is integer, so it will be returning as 1. Got it? This is abstract class, or I can say it is a sealed class. Okay, the abstract class and the sealed class, should the abstract class should have a must inherit keyword, and the function inside your abstract class should have must override keyword written for the function, and it should not have a body. The body will be written when you will inherit the abstract class. Okay, so these things will be done automatically. Okay, now let's work with your interfaces. Okay, so let's see what do you mean by interface. The interface is same like as your abstract class. which has the class, but the thing is that it has the function where the body is not written. Okay, body means whatever the functionality should be there of the function is not written inside the function. So let's create an interface. Public interface, I can say interface 1. So this interface has some sub procedure. I can say it should have sub procedure or a function. Public function add, and this add should have by val a as integer, and it should return as integer. Okay, so the public keyword on the interface of method declaration, we can directly write the function add. So we don't have to write the public keyword. If it is a public interface, it has to public, the function has to be public. So let's create a class, public class b, and it implements an interface which is called as your what is the name of an interface, int1. When I uh, complete this implements int1, automatically the same function got created. Okay, and it is saying this function is taking one parameter or one parameter, and it is going to return something as integer, which implements int1 dot add. Okay, int1 means what is an interface and is going to implement the add function. Okay, so this is also one of the method to use the inheritance. The thing is that let's create a one more interface which is called int2, and the same thing here, function add will be there inside your int2. Now if I use the same thing here two classes cannot be inherited into one classes in your ordinary inheritance, or I can say object oriented programming. It won't works with your inherits. Means abstract class, then I can say comma, and then I will write the class 1. Okay, it will not allow you to inherit two classes inside one classes at the same time. Okay, so if you want to do all these things too, if you want to inherit two classes inside one class, at that time you will be using the interfaces, and in interface you will be writing it like this: public class, the new class name, implements interface 1 and interface 2. Okay, must implement function add as an integer for interface 2. Okay, let's see what is that. It should implements int1 comma int2. Okay, this is how it works. Okay, we are through with our okay we are through with our abstract classes, sealed classes. So we'll be removing all these things. Or let's now work with your partial classes. The partial classes is used for the robustness. If you want to distribute the code, at that time we will be using the partial classes. Let's see what is the use of the partial class. Let's create one more form. Okay, let's have one button on it. Let's double click on it. Now let's create a partial class. uh, Basically, let's see what is a class. Public class a1, and if I write the same thing, public class a1, so it will give me an error, so that it will say the name a1 conflicts, means both of the classes are having the same name. And if I write the here, it is called as my partial public class, and this is your a1. Again, let's use a partial public class. And if I write here a sub procedures, which is called as public sub a, and let's write message box a, and let's copy it, let's paste it. Oops, sorry, copy it and let's paste it here. Okay, so he'll be saying there are multiple definitions which are having the same signature and the same name called as a. So I'll be saying why it is happening like this, because it is having the same class name and it's partial, means even though this looks like two different classes, this is a single class. Okay, I'll be explaining to you here itself, be just writing the different sub procedure names. This is your a and this is your a1. So let's create a one more class. Now let's use the same class which is in form 3, and here I'll be creating an object, new your a1 class. Okay, so this is a11 sub procedure, so we should not have a conflict. So obj1 dot can access a and double a11. Okay, so this is the sub procedure for your bus sub procedure uh, a, and the same object obj dot a11 will work for the sub procedure. Correct, so we can distribute these things, means if this class is written here, this class can be written anywhere else. The ASP.NETs use the same concepts. Okay, we'll be studying it afterwards. Okay, so let's see. Let's start with your form 3. Let's execute and A11. Okay, so the one part is remaining. If we want to restrict the class from inheriting, so we can specify not inherit, means it should be like this, not inheritable. Okay, public not inheritable class and the name of the class. It means this class will not be inheritable, will not be inherit. Okay, so thanks for viewing this tutorial. This completes our OPS concepts, which you all have in the syllabus. Okay, thanks, bye bye.